So when you think of Saudi Arabia, what comes to mind? For most of us, it's probably two things: massive oil wealth and even bigger deserts. But, behind that image, something almost unbelievable is happening. A nation that's literally defined by sand is building its own rivers. They're challenging the very idea of what's possible.
I mean, that's a question that just sounds impossible, right? Saudi Arabia is the largest country on the planet without a single permanent natural river. We're talking 98% desert. So where in the world would all the water for an artificial river even come from? Well, to get that answer, we actually have to look deep underground first. You see, before this whole mega project kicked off, Saudi Arabia was sitting on a kind of hidden treasure, a secret stash of water that fueled its growth for decades. But that treasure? It was running out, and it was running out fast.
That secret source is something called fossil water. Basically, it's ancient groundwater that got trapped in deep underground pockets or aquifers millions of years ago. And here's the crucial part: it's non-renewable. It's not like rain that fills it back up. Think of it like a giant battery that you can't recharge. And for decades, they were draining it like there was no tomorrow.
And they drained it at a pretty shocking rate. It all started back in the 1970s with a really ambitious plan to grow their own wheat in the desert to be self-sufficient. And hey, it worked, but it came at a huge cost. By 2003, farming was gulping down 85% of the nation's water. The final straw came in 2016. NASA satellites showed just how bad the problem was. It was a catastrophe, and the government had no choice but to pull the plug on the whole program.
Just take a second and let this number sink in. 2 trillion liters. That's how much fossil water they were losing every single year. That's like draining 800,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools every year. This wasn't a small leak. It was a full-blown crisis that needed a crazy, almost impossible solution.
And that crazy solution is this: a man-made river. An underground network of pipelines built on a scale that humanity has just never seen before. This isn't just another infrastructure project. It's a wild attempt to completely redraw a nation's geography.
So the whole network is planned to stretch for 12,000 kilometers. And we're not talking about your average pipes here. These things are massive, like over 2 meters wide in some places, all coated to prevent corrosion. They're basically giant arteries designed to pump life-giving water across an entire country. And the amount of water flowing through them is just mind-boggling. This system is designed to move 9.4 billion liters of fresh water every single day. They're going to pump this water up mountains, literally fighting against gravity, to get it to cities and towns that have always lived with the threat of running dry.
Now, this slide really puts the sheer scale of this thing into perspective. At 12,000 kilometers, this artificial network is almost double the length of the famous Nile River. It's an underground, man-made system that completely dwarfs one of the most legendary natural rivers on Earth. It's just wild.
But okay, this brings us back to that central mystery. Where is all this water coming from? Well, the answer isn't buried under the sand anymore. It's in the huge bodies of water on either side of the country: the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf.
The first method they use is called multi-stage flash distillation. The idea is actually pretty simple. You boil salt water, you catch the steam, which is pure H2O, and you cool it back down into fresh water. But the scale is just enormous. They heat the seawater and then pass it through all these chambers, each with lower pressure than the last, which makes it flash into steam over and over. It's basically a brute force way to make unbelievable amounts of fresh water.
Then you've got the second, much more modern method: reverse osmosis. And this is where it gets really high-tech. It's kind of inspired by biology. They use insane amounts of pressure to force seawater through this special membrane. And the tiny little holes in this membrane are so small, they can filter out 99% of all the salt, minerals, even viruses can't get through. It's incredibly precise, and it uses a lot less energy.
So what's the result of all this amazing tech? Well, it's pretty staggering. Look at this chart. A whopping 66%, 2/3, of Saudi Arabia's fresh water now comes from desalination. They've basically manufactured their own water supply, turning what was once a huge weakness into a technological superpower.
But, you can't just create billions of liters of fresh water every day and not have some kind of consequence. For every single liter of pure water they make, something gets left behind. And that something is creating a huge environmental headache.
So here's the deal. After you take the fresh water out of seawater, you're left with this super concentrated, really salty gunk called brine. And this project churns out 329,000 tons of it every single day.
If that number is hard to wrap your head around, think of it like this. That's like dumping the weight of more than 1,600 blue whales, the heaviest animal on the planet, worth of pure salt back into the ocean, day after day. That kind of volume has some serious side effects for the marine life there.
So pumping all of that hot, super salty brine back into the ocean messes with the local sea temperature and salt levels. It disrupts the whole ecosystem and is creating these dead coral zones in the beautiful Red Sea. But engineers are coming up with some really clever fixes. They're using deep-sea diffusers that spread the brine out so it has less of an impact. And then there's this really cool idea called brine mining. They're figuring out how to pull valuable minerals like magnesium, potassium, even lithium out of the waste. So they could actually turn a huge pollutant into a profitable new resource. Pretty smart, right?
So, despite all the challenges, this whole project is so much more than just a bunch of pipes. It's a statement. It's a declaration that human ingenuity can find a way around even the biggest environmental hurdles. It's a vision for the future, literally written in sand.
Of course, a vision this big needs a ton of power. Just the pumping stations alone, the ones needed to push all that water uphill against gravity, they eat up 9% of the entire country's electricity. It's a constant, energy-hungry battle to make water go where nature never wanted it to. And you know, all this incredible effort has done more than just create water. It's built a whole new reputation. Saudi Arabia is now the #1 producer of desalinated water in the world. And get this, in a wild turn of events, this desert nation, once known for its lack of water, is going to host the World Water Forum in 2027. They're positioning themselves as a global leader on the issue.
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, it proves the technology can engineer some absolutely mind-blowing solutions to scarcity. It can literally create water where there is none. But as we see these huge benefits weighed against some pretty serious environmental and